Hi everyone, my name is Della Phelps. I'm an artist as well as I'm known as a bicycle aide. How are you doing today? I'm doing great. Hope you're doing great too. First of all, thank you for selecting to watch this video. Do appreciate it. Now from what you can see on my desk, I have the Faber-Castell 24 pencil set of the Albrecht Durer Magnus watercolor pencils. I acquired this recently and unboxed them in a mini haul and did the swatching on it. So now it's time to make some art with them. Before I can start making any art, there's some things that would be good to explore and make some decisions on. Now, I pretty much have already decided I'm going to be doing a single tulip. I'm still going to have the stem and 2 leaves at least in there. But I don't want it set in a vase, nor do I want the setting to be a jumble of leaves and maybe some hazy color for other tulips. Just want a single tulip, probably emphasized, not in the center, but emphasized and gradiated out to a darker color in the background. And what I think I'm going to do, since the tulip, let's look at the swatches here, I'm thinking of would be a combination of possibly these colors, gradations, and then of course you're looking at the color of the leaf and the stem, maybe a combination of these two mixed, with maybe a little bit of that. So maybe I can do like an area combination of this and a blue-green down here. It gradiates out to darker, and maybe a blue-green something up here, and then I'll have the red. Let's see how that looks. So let me grab two of these. Two colors I'm thinking of for the tulip. And let's do a little bit of swatching these together. And the paper I'm using is, in my scrap I always put a little note at the bottom. This is the top page of it. This is drawing paper. It's a Fabriano 1264. It has a decent weight to it. I mean, it's drawing paper. There's no, you know, but it's good to be able to do swatches on. And this is something I had left over from another project, so that's the reason why I think this is good. Now, even though these are watercolor pencils and I plan on activating them, I can still test them on it, even though it may get a little buckled or a little wavy, as they say. Let's try that color. I don't think I'm going to go this deep. Well, it could possibly go that deep in the tulip, but let's go with this for now. And let's just move into this, which is good. And then we're looking at, I know this is super bright. Let's lay this down first as a stem and leaf base color. And let's go over it with the next one, which would be this, which is a little more blue-green, but with the base color, super bright. That may work. Let's try another combination. Let's try this combination, which is this color here. In case you didn't see it, that's a dark phthalo. Alright, let's see. I'll bring it up. Hopefully you've been seeing what I've been doing. If not, I apologize. Now that really hits the nose. Hits it on the nose. The colors I can use to help combine things. Okay. Alright, so let's lay down a little bit of a color up here so we can see that combination that I like right next to the reds and the burgundy. How's that working? Yeah, I think that will work fantastic. That's that color. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm going through with you and showing you some of the preliminary work I do, or probably most people do, I don't know, but at least something that I do before I start a color pencil piece, because I want to have some confidence in the colors I've selected. And is it going to work for me? Because like this one here, it almost makes the grade. And then I saw this. And to a lot of people will say, oh, that's the same thing. There's just a hint difference. And from my point of view, my eye, that hint of difference is what I think is substantial or enough that that's the type of color I want. So next thing to do is the background. So I want it kind of like not a total halo, but emphasize. So we could go with like a white around like the red, like this, and then come up with the other colors that gradiates out. But I don't want them super bright like these colors here. I want them a little more muted. So I'm thinking you can use the standard issue. Let's do the gradation and a monotone in the grays, like this. And then, of course, you press a little harder. And then we can go with I think you can get deeper and deeper. I don't know if black would work in particular. Let's see. Maybe lightly. And then go over it. The gray. And then once I get that all graded out the way I want, then I can go back in with maybe phthalo blue. Or do I want the ultramarine? Let's look at the ultramarine. And let's look at the dark green. So this would be like in the bottom half. Just put a light color on across. And that would go up as well to the sky area. So we can get some color, but muted color, in the gradation of gray that I laid down to the yellow. And keep in mind, I'm just doing this quickly. And then we can take the deep green, add a little bit of that, getting darker as you go back. And should work. Let's see how it would. Well, let's put in the top first. So on the top, I would probably still use the ultramarine. And maybe this. So I want a kind of bluish green. Okay. I have to work on that a little more. I think it has promise. Because you can have like maybe a hint of leaves massive around it. It kind of got muddy. I'm gonna have to practice on that, but I think I'm on the right track. However, this is what I'm doing when I'm picking out colors and figuring out what do I start out with. Thought you might want to see that. I just completed doing some practice with the background on how I'm going to lay it down on the paper doing the tulip picture. I have selected the paper I'm going to be using with this artwork, and that is the Strathmore Ready Cut Series 500 Hot Press Imperial watercolor paper. It is 140 pounds, 100% cotton. What I've done is I've taken a piece of the Strathmore Imperial 500 8x10 pre-cut paper. That's the Strathmore Imperial 500 hot press watercolor paper. It is 140 pounds and is 100% cotton. And I've taped it down to this artboard, which actually, if you check some of my prior videos, I do have several videos on making artboards out of scrap cardboard, and this is one I made actually from that video that I posted. It's gone through a lot. I've stretched paper on boards like this. I just keep resealing it because, you know, when you staple it and pull it out, it does create a hole for water, but if you seal it back up, it's perfectly fine. Let me stop diversing there and get back to what we're doing, which is I'm going to be drawing a tulip. The reference I'm using is one that I put in my library. I believe it's from Pixabay, from maybe 8 or 9 months ago, maybe a year. I went on Pixabay and started going through some of the tulip pictures, and I didn't see it. There's a lot of tulip pictures, and I barely cracked the surface, so it still may be there. So, the reason why is I like the simplicity of a single tulip. It is straight up. I like some of the variegation and the shape, along with the two leaves. Now the big question is how I'm going to orient it. Now, many art instructors and books will tell you don't center it. Well, sometimes you want to break the rule, and maybe I want to do it now. I don't think so. It would be more like that. Where's my light source? Is it going to be coming from this side and going over? I normally will default from coming up above or over here. This is almost straight on, maybe a slight angle like that. I think that would be good, like a light that comes from this, maybe this side, not all the way up this way. So probably want to move it over a bit so it's not totally centered. Just slightly off center. I think that would be good. I also want to give a little more space up here. I think this would be good. I'm going to go ahead and mark it. The pencil I'm using is a Cretacolor, and this is one I had from a set I got quite some time ago. I'm using up old stock. I've used up quite a few out of that pencil set, and I had this left, and it'd be great for sketching, so that's the reason why I put it there. And I'm marking on the tape, not the paper per se. I am going to be drawing directly on the paper. That's a little bit unusual for me. Usually what I will do is I'll draw everything out, work it, rework it, get to exactly where I want it, and there could be quite a few erasers or total revisions and so forth. Once I get it to where I like it, then I'll transfer it onto the watercolor paper, because you don't want a lot of erasers, because then if you use watercolor, that's going to be picked up by the paper, and you'll see change in color and how it lays down on the paper. As well with colored pencils, you'll also get some big changes if the surface is abraded from multiple erasers. So I believe this is the one I want. I want it like that. And I believe we're probably looking at something over here at the... So, but I do have my trusty divider. This is a plastic proportional divider. It works just fine. There are much more professional drafting proportional dividers, brass and so forth. Quite a bit more expensive. They both function essentially the same way. Now I'm not going to change the proportion. I'm going to keep it this proportion. I printed it out that way. I will be changing the colors. The shape's not going to be exactly copied, but more or less that same type of shape. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I did make my low marks here. You could, if you wanted to, take a ruler and measure everything out. And I know some people who do that. I'm not going to do that this time. I will get a general idea how long the stem is. I want to keep it, fairly proportional. It doesn't have to be exact. The nice thing when you do flowers, things don't have to be that exact, because every flower will be slightly different. So it doesn't matter if it's a little bit different from the photo. For this part of it, as well as some other parts that I've linked together to make this video, I have increased the speed to twice normal speed. If I didn't do that, then the video would be over 2 hours, because everything linked together, not counting drying time after I activated the watercolor pencils, because you do need to let it dry totally before you apply more color pencils, or you can damage the paper and not get the effect you want. Even without those drying times, it took me over 2 hours. So that's the reason why I've sped this up. I didn't want to go over twice normal speed like I've done on some other videos, in case you did want to follow along. Now if you want to take it to normal speed, you can do so, or even slower. Just change your settings on your YouTube player. I suggest you mute the audio, because when you change the speed for the video part of it, the audio part of it will change as well. Now what you see me using here, the red item, that's not the pencil, is called a proportional divider. Now I'm not using it as a proportional divider. I'm actually using it as an actual divider. As you've seen, I laid out the width of the stem as well as the length of the stem. Then I did the width of the curvature for the petals, all together as the tulip flower opening bud, you might say. I will past bud. Then you'll see where I've done some lengths, as well as some other measurements, as where how wide the petals are, how far from the stem that they come down to on some of them, and the total length and so forth. Now the reason why I'm doing that, it helps me to draw far cleaner, since I'm drawing directly onto the watercolor paper. If you do a lot of erasing, it debraids and damages the paper surface, which you can definitely see regular color pencils, also watercolor. So it kind of ruins the whole effect when you have that coming up. So that's the reason why you want to avoid excessive erasing and pencil marks, or possibly, indenting the paper when you're doing these type of paintings with watercolor or colored pencils or even watercolor pencils, which is, some people think is the best of both worlds, but you have aspects of both that you can use in making the painting. Now, oftentimes, I will actually draw a subject, especially more complex than this, out on another sheet of paper. Make all the changes, make sure I have everything the way I want, in proportion the way I want, and then I'll transfer it over. Now, that's not tracing. You're actually doing the original artwork, and you're just taking it off the sheet where you worked everything out and moving it over to your good paper or your watercolor paper, whatever you're using, with your color pencils as well. I see that as a good way of working, actually. You can try out many different ideas, not just go with the first one, and see what works. And then you can cleanly transfer it over, and you're good to go. Now you see me here, I'm getting the total width of that leaf. Now I don't have to be super exact with the leaves, and I'm not being. As you can see, I didn't have an excessive amount of points, at least not from my point of view. Just some lengths and widths, even with the petals of the tulip. But it helps me keep everything in relative proportion and size. So that's what I'm doing here with the leaf as well. Just want to make sure it goes up. As you can see, I'm not doing a whole lot of points on trying to get it absolutely exact. But I'm getting to the point where I like it and it looks good to me, and I believe that's pretty good. Now, when it comes to the second leaf, I'm actually looking at it from, okay, how far does it come down relative to where my pencil is, approximately where it's coming, and I put in the second leaf without using the proportional divider. Now, an interesting thing that many students and instructors have noted about requiring the use of a proportional divider is that in time you develop an eye. When you have your, as they say, a developed eye, you oftentimes can see and translate that proportion onto your painting surface or paper, and when you check it with a divider, it matches up almost totally perfectly. I'm still developing that. Now, on this segment here, you see where I'm starting to talk about how I am going to lay everything out. I say again, I want to make it gradiated like the reference, but I'm not the colors. And I decided how I'm going to do that, and that is do a gradation. That's the gray color gradation. Now, in the set, there's only 2 grays, and that's all I'm using on this picture. Don't know if I said that up front, but since I got it, and I did the swatches, I said I do artwork using only the Albrecht Durer, and it's 24 colors, so you can definitely do that, especially with this picture here. So what I'm doing at this point in time is I'm laying in the gray color, beginning to do that. And I'll lay down the lighter gray with a light touch, going darker and darker, and then I'll bring in the other gray and do the same, but a little further back, and that way I can get that type of what I want to say a spotlight type effect, and it will be coming in the middle, much like the reference, and I think it'll look pretty good. Now, I decided I don't want to use the background. As I said before, I'm going with the blue up at the top and more of a blue green down the bottom, but dark. I don't know if that's going to be the absolute best choice, but it will be interesting, and it would be something I want to try, at least in this revision. I may go back and do some other revisions, maybe even different sizes, with some different color schemes. right now what I'm doing is I'm putting in the gray background. You see where I'm leaving the white space for the yellow and white to do the illumination part of it, say the spotlight of it, and I'm going to be laying in the rest of this gray. Now I'm going to let you listen to the jazz music in the background. I hope you like jazz while this goes on, and I'll jump back in when this is complete. I have now completed laying in the gradated gray background using the light gray in the Magnus set along with the medium and then a little bit of black graded all out and blended together. Now, instead of activating it with water like I thought I might be doing, much like what I did with this sample here, I think instead what I'm going to do is go ahead and add white with the yellow to make a cream on the most inner part of this light area, then gradient it out to yellow, and then I'll have to decide whether or not to add a little bit of color and then activate it all and blend it out, or just blend it out with the yellow and the gray and then add color on top of it. Anyway, let's go ahead and get the yellow. Here's my glassine page. Let's slide down. Now some glassines are a little more transparent. This is still acid-free, so I got a good deal on it, and I like this, so this is what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do here is, instead of going directly like I started to, what I think I'm going to do is let's try out two yellows we have in the Magnus set. I wish I could get open stock on the Magnus, but I heard that it's not going to be made anymore, unfortunately. I would love to get some more of the light gray, as well as the medium gray. You can see I'm going to be using that a lot more. Now that yellow was the cadmium yellow Magnus color, this one. Now I applied it on top of white, and I'm going to put some more white on top of it. That makes a nice cream. But is it a little bit darker? It is warm. It is a little bit darker than what I want. Of course, I wouldn't have to put it down so heavy. Let me put another swatch of white. Let's try it out with a little bit less color. That's a possibility. Let's see with the other yellow, which is the yellow glaze, which is this one. I got a light swatch up here. It is a little bit of a cooler yellow, not as warm as the cadmium. Alright, I think I like that. It's easier to lay down. And I like that. That's going to work well. So, let's double check also by activating it, because it's a color that's going to get activated with water. These are watercolor pencils. I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm going to use this right up here and gradient it out, and maybe add a touch of that towards the end going into the gray. Okay, so let's get started. Since I'm off the edge, I don't need to put that right there. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna clean up that line just a touch right there. That's some graphite. Now I'm using my hand. I should be using my brush. Just come back in and touch that back up. Now you see here where I'm just cleaning up just a little bit and making sure I got everything the way I want it with the gray gradient. I do use the erasers to model that a little bit. The eraser I'm using is the Vanish. I'll be putting in a little more gradient. Now what you'll be seeing is I will be adding in the yellow here shortly. You saw where I'm starting to add in the white, which is the base layer to make the cream color. And I make that with the white and the yellow glaze color, which you're seeing here now. I'll go past the white and gradient it out with just the yellow glaze, then later on onto the cadmium, just as you saw in my test swatches. Now I'll go ahead and finish that up for the whole picture. I didn't want to have you watch all that. It's kind of like watching grass grow. In my last video segment, I was just finishing up adding in the cream color, which is a combination of the white and the yellow glaze, as well as using the yellow glaze to gradient out, which will give it more of a spotlight gradient look when I finish up the tulip picture. At that time, I decided to go ahead and add in the blue-green background in a gradient form and then activated it. I decided to go for it. Unfortunately, I did lose that part of the video, and I apologize, so please forgive me. Now I was making a decision. Do I want to blend everything out? Or do I want to just leave it? And I decided to go for it. I've already got all the blue-green in with a gray gradient, and I'm taking a flat 1/2 inch watercolor brush, I believe, no, 3/4 of an inch watercolor brush. It's a synthetic, and I am pulling and blending out the color by just going one way. You have to wipe it, otherwise you'll bring the dark back in. And here you see me dress the edges, bringing up the extra water so it cannot backflow in. And I'm going to go around and activate the whole area. And you see that I'm pulling out the yellow, and I'm wiping each time and cleaning the brush so I don't bring the dark blue-green into the area where I want to keep it light. but yet I want that gradient effect. I was very pleasantly surprised because I was able to get like a brush mark type look. I wasn't initially thinking about going for that type of look, but it was a happy accident, I guess you would say, if you're a Bob Ross fan. But sometimes that's the way it works. I did thoroughly enjoy doing this. I'm glad I went for it to change up the background and activate it, even though it did look great, just the way it is, where you would lay down a traditional color pencil background if you're going for this type of background. But adding the ability to activate and get some of those brush marks in, that was just over the top. And that's one of the things I love about full watercolor pencils, and the fact that I got the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils. That's Magnus. It helps speed up that process, laying down that color. And I'm going to enjoy them thoroughly as long as I have them. Maybe they'll start making them again. Who knows? But they're beautiful to work with, just like the regular Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils. I don't know if you've seen me work with the Caran d'Ache museum pencils, which are the watercolor ones. They're also very, very lovely to work with. Overall, I think the Caran d'Ache museum pencils feel just a touch drier, not quite as creamy in the laying down, which is the watercolor pencils, than the Albrecht Durers. But that's just me. They're still both beautiful pencils to work with, and as you can see here, you can get some fantastic results. That bridges watercolor and color pencils, or you can do traditionally one or the other, so it doesn't matter. It gives you a lot of options and a lot of things you can do in making your painting special by using the different techniques. I'm just going to finish up now with some dragging. You saw where I accidentally brought it back in, and yet again I'll get that lifted back off and get that all graded out. I do need to change my paper towel, as you can tell. And I'm working a little more. I'm dabbing up a few places, cleaning up the edges. Apologize, I again did it. I took a break, gave some time on this, and then I'm coming back to finish it up with the Tulip. I wanted some time to step back and take a look at this, plus I had a couple chores I need to take care of. I don't think I am going to activate the leaves. I like the way they look. I like what I achieved there. Initially, I was kind of a little bit on the fence, but now that I've had some chance to step back and look at it from afar, I like what I accomplished with it. And that's the great thing about watercolor pencils. I can leave it as it is, unactivated, and treat it just like a color pencil laydown. Or I can activate it and use an additional dimension. So I'm going to leave it. I am. More than likely I'll activate the Tulip, but as far as the other goes, I like it the way it is, frankly. So I'm going to go back, and the first thing I'm going to do is lay down the color. I've got there's another more orangey red, scarlet, I believe it's called. Could be wrong here. No, pale geranium light, and that I'm not going to particularly be using. The other thing I think I haven't put down is like a sheen. I'm going to lay it down and like that. At times I may get the top of my head involved. If I do, forgive me. it like that for now. Eventually I probably will, well, maybe I'll go ahead and put the white on it to lighten it up just a bit. Yeah, there we go. Alright, I'm going to lay down this color, and then there's, if you remember from the picture, a dark area here. It looks very, very dark, almost black, but it's not. It's a very, very deep purple, maybe with a little blackish tone in it. I am just going to leave it as is. Right now, I'm just going to lay down this color on top. I already tried out that deep color. May have gotten that a little bit too deep. But we'll see. There may be a remedy later on. Matter of fact, I know I did get that a little bit too deep. Alright, I'm beginning to lay in the color for this particular petal. Seeing that I have increased the speed of the video to double normal speed. And as we discussed prior in this video, if you want it at normal speed, all you have to do is change the setting in your YouTube player. But I would mute out the audio, since the audio will be affected as well. What you're seeing here is I'm using a combination of laying down the colors and then dressing up some lines or possible areas using erasing, particularly with an electric eraser, that will help me to get an effect I'm looking for, which will give it like a sheen type I'm trying to go with. Now that's my electric eraser. I had a little bit of issue with it. That eraser I've actually had for over 10 years. It's a Staedtler-Meyers electric eraser, and that exact same model ended up then being picked up by the Faber-Castell, and now Derwent has it. But this little eraser has been a real workhorse for me. It uses 2 AA batteries, so it's a very good eraser. And I may have to get me onto Derwent if I keep having a little bit of a problem with the battery contacts on it. That's what's been going on here recently. We'll see. We'll see. I'm now back to laying in more of the red color. As you see, I took out an accent line. It wasn't quite what I wanted. So I'm coming back in with an eraser, electric eraser, to do that. Also, I'm lifting up a little bit of the dark color I put down where it shows the inside curl of that petal at the top, because I think I got a little bit too dark. Now I'm going back to finish laying down the color. Sometimes I do that. I like to break it up. When I think about it, I'll go for it. Doing something else. Some people would work more linear in that. I sometimes will jump around, and many times not. It just depends on my mood. So I'm back to doing the coloration on the tulip petal. And then you'll see me then change to a little darker color to also gradiate that out as well, and indicate some shade portions. Alright, I'm still laying in the color, and I'm actually doing it in such a way that you'll see color marks, like a mark applied. Maybe if you use a very small brush and you're using it, I was kind of going for that type of an effect, and kind of like not as in your face type of stroke brush mark type effect. However, something subtle that still indicates it and it's there. And I'm very happy to say I feel like I really did achieve that. Now here I'm using the Hilo blue to start laying in the dark areas, swatches of color that to me on the reference photo, at least on the screen, look more of a purplish to almost black, as you can see sometimes. So I am creating the purple. I don't have any deep purples in this particular set of 24, but you can easily create it using the red and combining it with the Hilo blue, which is a reddish tone blue. And as you can see, you can come up with a beautiful purple. Now, it won't stay that color. It's going to get a little deeper. And here I'm just talking about possibly if I had my gloves, that would really be nice. And I do cut out the thumb. I leave enough of the glove so it comes up to the first joint, as well as I cut out the index finger and the middle finger. And when you do that, that way you can be absolutely certain you're not going to get anything on to your colored pencil page that you're working on, although it can smear it sometimes. However, with the glove, you can actually use some duct tape, which I have trouble with adhesives and do have a contact dermatitis with, is you can just use a piece of duct tape, stick it onto the glove, and then stick your glassine on top of that. You're definitely not going to be smudging it, and you're going to have the picture very well protected. The reason why I'm not wearing my gloves right now is because I'm out of them. I don't like the stretchy cotton glove. I do like the non-stretchy, and I have in the past found them as a disposable. That's what I'm looking for. But if I have to go to one that's not, we'll see what the cost is, and I'll cut out the fingers and maybe whip them down so it can be washed without fraying and degrading. But for now, I'm just going to use the glassine paper under, or I should say glassine paper underneath my hand to protect from getting oils from my hand onto the picture. And there you saw I brought out the electric eraser again. I actually have two, and you'll see both of them here. One is a more recent purchase. I believe it's Afmat. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it is. And it has the ability to have a very small, thin eraser. Almost as thin as if you use a Tombow Mono, a little round eraser. It's pretty close to that size. You change the chalk in it, or you can have the same size eraser I have with my little battery-operated Strathmore Mars one. Now I move the glassine paper out of the way, since my hand is not resting or touching the pictures over to the side, and I'm working a little bit up there with the curl, and also laying out a little bit of where the next petal and the top of the petal behind it is going to be. Now I'm looking at how this cuts in and shows, and you'll see where the outer petal does seem to have an attachment, but it doesn't quite go all the way down broadly. It just has an attachment. And I'm now laying in the colors, the dark colors showing the shading, and then defining that area. I'm looking back again and laying down even more color. I'm really beginning to like the way this is looking. Now, where that outer petal overlaps the inner petal, there is a darkness from the patch that is occurring, the color patch that is occurring on this particular tulip, as shown in the reference. I don't get it absolutely exact, but very similar, very, very similar. And I'm going to continue doing another petal just like it, as I'm saying there. Next to it, let you just watch and see how I'm doing that. I've already explained some of the colors I'm using, so enjoy. I will have some soft jazz music as well. Alright, this is pretty much the Tulip. I didn't do any water activation of the colored pencil on the leaves. I like the way they look. Initially when I looked at them, after I let them sit, I like the way them look. Now, pretty much like the way everything turned out with this Tulip, except maybe a little bit more variation of the yellow. I did the best I had with what I had. Overall, though, I'm very, very pleased. It's a very good practice. I probably will be doing another Tulip, maybe not the same one, with a different type of background, or maybe even do it leaving the background white. So, I hope you enjoyed it. I kept everything pretty much double speed, not too fast. If I made it regular time, it would have been way, way over an hour. Keep in mind, there were several different sessions because when I activated and got this wet, I had to let it dry. In total, combined, without allowing for drying time, I spent a little over 2 hours on this artwork. It's good practice. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer Magnus pencils. It's unfortunate that, from what I can find out, they have been discontinued. I'm going to enjoy them while I have them. So until next time, you have a good day, and please subscribe, hit that thumbs up, it really would help me, and you have a wonderful day.